For more than 3 decades, Chris Jericho has been one of the most influential and innovative names in mainstream professional wrestling. He made a name for himself in WCW and made that name for himself when they didn't want him to be a main event attraction. Then he made the leap to WWE and became a worldwide superstar. In 2019, he joined a brand new burgeoning company that had a big budget and was financed by Jacksonville Jaguars NFL executive Tony Khan, All Elite Wrestling. He helped build it into a ground-up challenger for WWE at the top of the wrestling mountain. However, after 6 years in the company, there have been a lot of speculation that the former and first AEW World Champion could be on his way out of the land of Elite and back to WWE. So what's happening? Is Chris Jericho done with AEW? Let's break down how we got here, what Jericho means to both AEW and WWE, and why him leaving AEW would be a real problem for Tony Khan and his company. A potential return to WWE, what that could mean, and how that could be maybe one of the biggest stories of the wrestling year. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm Kevin Kellum. Get in the comments, or I'm personally coming to your house and putting you in the Walls of Jericho submission hold on the lawn in front of your house. I don't care if you tap out and the sprinklers come on. Get in the comments. You can be the best in the world at what you YouTube if you subscribe to Sportskeeda Wrestling and turn that ding bell icon on so you know when we drop our new videos. Hit the like button and come on, baby. Yeah, those are deep Jericho references. Dave Meltzer of Wrestling Observer Radio has reported that Chris Jericho's AEW contract is expected to run out by the end of the calendar year, opening the door for a possible WWE return for this certified first ballot Hall of Famer once he hits the free market, if he hits the free market. Meltzer also noted that there's been plenty of buzz within WWE circles about Jericho possibly returning to the company, with speculation growing that he could, surprise, make a return at the Royal Rumble in January 2026. Meltzer said Jericho is actually a really big story. His contract is up at the end of the year, or late in the year, but there's certainly been lots and lots of talk about WWE. Jericho has been absent from AEW television since dropping the Ring of Honor World Championship to the Mass Bandito at the AEW Dynasty event in April. On that episode of Dynamite that followed, he told his Learning Tree proteges, Big Bill and Brian Keith, to step up and prove their worth in his absence. The rumors of Jericho hitting the free market outside of AEW started when he took some time away from the company and took on another tour with his long-running rock band Fozzy, and didn't make a return after the tour concluded. He added more fuel to the speculation over the weekend by liking an Instagram post that suggested he could head back to WWE once his AEW contract expires. Now, this can also be a crafty move by Jericho, who has always been keen to understand how this may have just been a drop of blood in the shark-infested waters of the internet wrestling community. He has wrestling fans talking about him, and he's been off TV for months. He always kind of knows what he's doing, and he's been at the big-time wrestling game level for a long time, and for the most part, on his own terms. He's also been quiet about it outwardly and hasn't said anything on his Talk is Jericho podcast about it, at least not yet. If this actually happens, and the big if is Jericho going back to WWE, it will be a huge blow to Tony Khan and AEW, at some level, for certain. I know the detractors are there. Don't worry, we'll talk about that. But Jericho is one of the very few mainstream stars that AEW has right now. They have a lot of great talent on their roster, world-class names, but Jericho is undeniably a star. The Jera haters drinking their haterade could argue that his recent run with the Learning Tree faction has been a bit underwhelming, or maybe just sour in comparison to his other work for AEW, but he can still be beneficial for AEW. Beyond his base level star power, which is not dying down, Jericho's leadership and experience makes him a valuable asset. That is something that has been expressed within AEW by several talents and even Tony Khan. Many in the locker room stand and gain to work under his guidance and his knowledge that he has gained over the years. Jericho has been in AEW ever since the company really got going as a televised product. He was one of the major names who joined the company from the start and took a risk in doing so. Recognizing his star power and mainstream popularity with fans from the Attitude Era, AEW made him the first AEW World Champion, and that was a good bet to make. With Jericho as the face of AEW, they gained instant credibility in the initial years. After proving a global star can carry the top title, they gave the new promotion some legitimacy, and Jericho, in his ability, made the other superstars who were being introduced to a wider audience feel like other superstars. Even losing the championship to another name that leapt from WWE to AEW and Jon Moxley, he remained a central figure in the company. And then his Inner Circle faction got going. He was a part of some of AEW's most memorable matches, including the Stadium Stampede, Blood and Guts, and Anarchy in the Arena. Jericho instantly stayed in or around the main event scene for the company, and his rivalries, long and drawn out, paid off big with the names like MJF, Eddie Kingston, and even his own Inner Circle ally at one point, Sammy Guevara. It helped elevate these new names and made them feel more legitimate. Some are going to argue that Jericho hasn't been performing at the same level he once did. We can hear you in the comments already. He wasn't getting the same reception? He's just another WWE reject. And maybe it's just a simple circumstantial issue of a bit of overexposure for Jericho. He's done a lot of storylines with a lot of different talents over several years here. And on top of that, the learning tree gimmick simply didn't connect maybe the way it was intended. It felt real mid-card for a guy who was very much the main event for most of the time in AEW. Yeah, he did the duties of trying to elevate Ring of Honor once again. That was Jericho once again putting his stardust on something to make it feel big or bigger again. Here's the reality, and a point that is leaned on way too much by people who really just watch wrestling at the surface level. He's 54 years old, and AEW has presented him as someone who's at the peak of his career. But maybe that isn't exactly working or needs to be modified. No one can expect him to do the things he did when he was 25 or 30 years younger than he is now. We're not saying that Jericho should retire. That is a silly argument or anything like that. That's Jericho's decision and his decision alone. But the reality is that his in-ring career is closer to the end than it is the beginning. And instead of booking him as a full-time regular wrestler, AEW should lean on his legendary status and treat him as a select attraction, something they started to do recently. There were plenty of ways to utilize him without overexposing him with consistent promos in the ring or backstage segments. He could have thrived maybe as a manager, an on-screen mentor, or something with slightly more psychological depth, like maybe that storyline he had with MJF. Wrestling on rare occasions, treating it like a big deal when we hear the bell ring and here's Jericho in a match. Look at Sting's run in AEW that proved how effective they can be at treating a superstar that we've seen on TV for a long time be treated like a special attraction. Jericho could have been positioned in a similar way, and maybe he still can be. AEW has shown it knows how to honor their legends, and if Jericho does return, the company must ensure that he's treated with the same respect and grandeur. And it's worth stating, AEW still wants Jericho. Tony Khan, the president of AEW and Ring of Honor, said to myself and other members of the media on a recent media conference call prior to the Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor event in Philadelphia that he wants Jericho back. Quoting him, "If and when the time presents itself, I would love to have him back. He's always in the highest of standing in AEW or Ring of Honor." Also worth noting, Khan did not directly address Jericho's current contract status, so it's a veiled topic where the speculation continues. Now, here's the obvious talking point. Jericho going back to WWE makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. In WWE, where he was featured over several big runs between 1999 and 2019, he truly became a big star, stacking up world championships, classic matches we'll never forget, and infamous storylines. Now that he is near the end of his career, hypothetically, why wouldn't he want to end it in a place where he found the most success and became the most famous? The Wrestling Observer himself, Dave Meltzer, noted that the reaction to Jericho returning to WWE would likely be far more favorable than what he's experienced recently in AEW. He's compared Jericho's situation to CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, both of whom struggled with certain sections of the very high standard holding AEW fanbase, but were embraced by the moment they walked back through the curtain into a WWE arena with pure electricity. Jericho has been a top star in WWE before, and it feels that there's an audience there that would react strongly to him if he were to make a surprise return. The obvious return platform of the Royal Rumble, the countdown to the millennium once again. We hear break the walls down, the lights flash, the pyro hits, Jericho steps onto the stage, the competitors in the ring freeze in shock, while the crowd absolutely erupts. It would be one of those special wrestling moments, the kind that fans talk about for years. Yet, that is something that Jericho has already done in his career at a Royal Rumble, and being a constant innovator who always seeks a clever yet captivating hook for the fans, Jericho returning at the Rumble feels a bit play by numbers. Countering that, though, Jericho coming back at the Rumble would be a give him the greatest hits moment again. Considering that Jericho could be entering the final stage of his career, that would be a great hit. We're not saying there's going to be crickets when Jericho comes out. Slow down. It would be a news-making moment. Constant buzz for days on end. The visibility that maybe he had been missing recently in AEW. Unlike his run there, at least the last part of it, WWE would be showing some restraint with Chris Jericho and how he's presented. Under Triple H's WWE, we've seen WWE be strategic with how they utilize someone returning to the company like a CM Punk before maybe giving him too much time or letting him work back into the conditioned idea of a WWE audience. Jericho doesn't have to have a lot of matches to feel like a big deal in WWE, and say the same thing for AEW as well. He has to feel meaningful every time he steps into the spotlight. And that is something Jericho has never forgotten. It's highly unlikely that WWE would position Chris Jericho as a world title contender at this stage of his career, especially right out of the gate. Instead, he would be in a far better, more suited, meaningful personal feud, possibly with younger names that he's never faced before. We also expect him to have his final match in WWE if he returns, and someone like Carmelo Hayes. That's a guy who'd be a great opponent for him. Yeah, he just made the list. Remember that? Down the line, he could also transition into a managerial role, perhaps even leading a new faction, allowing him to remain a major on-screen presence with limited physical demands of a full-time in-ring schedule. Jericho is at a stage of his entertainment career, which does not just limit him to professional wrestling, that every decision matters. He'll need to choose carefully between WWE and AEW. Both companies have their advantages. There's no doubt that he would be treated with respect in either place. However, AEW could be losing more if Jericho leaves the company now. His departure will once again add to an unsettling trend of wrestlers who've left AEW for WWE. AEW has already seen major names like Cody Rhodes, CM Punk exit for WWE, and more recently stars like Jade Cargill, Malachi Black, Miro, Penta, Rey Fenix, Ricky Starks have all made the jump. Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, and Sting have retired and are the only mainstream names on the roster when you bring in names like Jon Moxley and MJF, he was in that Happy Gilmore movie, Hangman Page and Swerve are also proving themselves to become really big names as well. They have a strong roster. AEW can survive without Chris Jericho. Coming out of the spring and into the summer without Jericho on AEW television, they've been surging for the most part with a successful stadium mega show and All In, and they're going to have future pay-per-view events available on HBO Max. Still, with Jericho leaving, it would be a blow, a significant one. As we've already stated, AEW President Tony Khan wants Jericho in the fold. According to Meltzer, Jericho could get more money from AEW President Tony Khan if he really didn't want to lose Jericho to WWE. Now, here's the most important question as we get to the end of the video. What do you think? Yes, you. Do you want to see Chris Jericho in AEW again, or do you never, ever want to see that happen again? Or should Jericho break the walls down in WWE once more? Also, what do you think Chris Jericho could do that's super exciting in wrestling right now? Get your fantasy booking fingers on the keyboard.